On today's episode.
Yeah, and I'm not going to say it's going to be true in every instance. It's ironic that something that people are saying, I'm not getting what I need from real people, so I've got to get it from AI. That as much as they say it's about others, that other person they need in their life, it's fundamentally self-centered. I don't want to have to do the work, make the sacrifices, be understanding and such with a real person. I don't want to, do whatever's required of me in order to make a relationship work. Instead, I'm going to go for an AI person there's never going to be any stress, any conflict or anything there, because that's what, this AI is designed for. Welcome to the Life Challenges podcast from Christian Life Resources. Our world today presents people with complicated issues of life and death, marriage and family, health and science. It can be a struggle to understand or deal with them. We're here to help by bringing good information and a fresh biblical perspective to these matters and more. Join us now for Life Challenges.
Hi, and welcome back. I'm Krista Potratz, and I'm here today with Pastors Bob Fleischman and Jeff Samuelson. And today we are going to talk about our December current events.
I'm sorry, it's that time of the year too.
Yeah, I know. I can't believe it's already December, but we have quite a few things, like always, to discuss. And one of the things that we are going to start with, one of the things really just on our radar at Christian Life Resources is what is being done and going on with assisted suicide. And this is a topic that we have talked about and really makes our current events, every once in a while here too. And so there is new developments in a few different places, but maybe starting with what is going on with Illinois.
I don't know what may have happened by the time this finally gets this episode gets released, but right at the end of October, the Illinois Senate passed a bill basically legalizing assisted suicide in the state of Illinois. And since it had already been passed by the Illinois House, that means it's going to the governor, Pritzker, for his signature. I don't believe he's indicated one way or the other what he's going to do. There are lots of people, fortunately, who are trying to pressure him and say, no, this is not good. We should not do this. Please veto this. But Illinois' law is set up in such a way that he can just kind of not act. If he doesn't sign it, refuse to sign it, then it automatically becomes law after a certain period. And, there's certainly a great risk. Pritzker does not have a reputation as a social conservative. So it seems pretty likely that Illinois is going to become the next state in the U.S. to legalize assisted suicide, making it, I believe it's the 12th?
It'll be the 13th.
13th, okay. Yeah, so that's something that we're all here in Wisconsin right now, but it's going to be right at our borders now that assisted suicide is legal.
Back in the early 1990s when Jack Kevorkian assisted Janet Atkins with terminating her life. At that time, it was kind of a joke, and we've talked about that before on the show. And what ended up happening, of course, is it was the beginning of kind of a wave of starting to get legislators to look more and more at it. And I'd mentioned earlier, too, that Derek Humphrey, who died not too long ago, who had written the recipe book on dying, Final Exit, he had said that their goal was to get people to keep talking about it to the point where they become used to talking about it. And so I remember once, I can't remember where I was in the United States speaking, but I remember saying that I think that there's a possibility that we could turn things around on abortion, but I don't think we're going to ever succeed on end-of-life issues because the appeal of autonomy, the appeal that I can decide for myself, is going to be too strong. We can make an argument for the unborn child on abortion, and that can be compelling for some. But even otherwise pro-life people on abortion just feel that, at the end of life, people should just be able to decide, go out on their own terms. And so right now, like I just mentioned when Jeff was talking there, that if Illinois passes this, they'll be the 13th state. There are over 18 states that are dealing with pending legislation. Here in Wisconsin, there's actually a meeting that I've been invited to on Thursday to deal with that. Now, Wisconsin has been proposing assisted suicide legislation for decades. In fact, that when I told that story about being on that interview, that radio show with Derek Humphrey, that was the first year it was proposed. So we're talking, 20 years, 20 plus years. So, but that's the strategy. You just keep bringing it up and bringing it up. And pretty soon it catches on.
Even though we are seeing that, and as you mentioned, the 13th state to do assisted suicide, we also do keep a close eye on other places too, in Christian Life Resources. And so, Jeff, you had found some interesting things going on in Scotland.
Yeah, Scotland is kind of an interesting geopolitical thing. They're part of the United Kingdom, but they've got a certain level of autonomy from the rest of the British Parliament and such. And actually, the British Parliament is also discussing assisted suicide at this time. But this was just something really specific about the Scottish plan that just really got my attention. That there's been a bill legalizing assisted suicide for Scotland before their parliament. A member of their Green Party recently proposed an amendment to the bill that was already there that would create a censored buffer zone around any facility where assisted suicides might take place. It's basically meaning if this is designated as a place where assisted suicides are going to happen, nobody can go around there, whether it's in the building, outside the building, on the sidewalk or whatever, and be doing anything to try to convince people not to take their lives through assisted suicide. This is not much different from the laws they currently have regarding protesting abortion. That you can't, people have been prosecuted in the UK over this, but it is really frightening to think that your mother has decided that there's no point anymore. She's got terminal cancer or whatever. She's going to go in and go for assisted suicide. But she's not, she's still a little bit on the fence. You will not be able to go there where she is and say, Mom, no, don't do this, and give her any reasons. No, because it's illegal. Or will be again if this passes, and I don't know if it will, but it's exactly the kind of thing that even if it doesn't pass at this first level, from what we know about the way things work with assisted suicide and euthanasia laws, if they get it in now, next year or 2 years down the road, then they'll add in these provisions.
The thing that's really been crazy, now a lot of the pro-life groups, the religious pro-life groups, have been doing a lot of intense writing about the image of God, man made in God's image. And because human life was created in the image of God, we understand that, first of all, as human life's specialness in all of creation. We do recognize that image of God was compromised with the fall into sin and restored through Christ. But it also is a designation for humans' specialness in all creation. And as a result, when people lose sight of that, they begin to treat human life like animal life. When it's no longer valuable, we terminate it. And people should be allowed to control how they want to exit the world. Now, we have some of the greatest technology of all time to alleviate pain, to alleviate suffering. But because we become so obsessed with creating heaven on earth that when we find out that we can't have that heaven on earth because our life is beginning to ebb away from cancer or whatever it is, it's almost like one last act of raising the tyrant fist and saying, I'm going out on my terms, and so we want to do it. That's why assisted suicide just keeps capturing the imagination of sinful people. We can be like God. We can have our own jurisdiction over who lives and who dies.
It's kind of ironic that in asserting this individual human right and authority, elevating that, you end up treating yourself and others on the level of animals.
Yeah. But think about this for a moment. What if it is really true that out of all of that was created, human life was at the top? They were the best. They were what God said, I'm making this in my image. Mm-hmm. They're so important. What if that's really true? Is this anything even remotely something acceptable to God? And yet, why does it catch on? Well, because the sinful mind is hostile to God. Every inclination of our heart is evil. If all of that is true, this is why people jump onto these bandwagons and they just think, well, I want to control it. Now, we're dealing with end-of-life issues in our own household. And as we deal with it, you definitely understand where people are coming from. But at the same time, we got to quit seeing ourselves as Lord and masters of our universe and simply stewards of God's creation.
I think it just stems from this idea that everybody you just do you. And I mean, I even feel that too, like it even makes witnessing hard too. Like when you're trying to tell somebody, it's like, oh yeah, well, yeah, church works for you, Krista, or church, I mean, that's great for you. And that I don't know, it's hard to get past like, no, this isn't just about me. Like this is about everybody. And it's such a hard place now.
Yeah, it's on so many issues. You as a Christian, or just in a political sense or whatever, you make a truth claim. This is what is true. And the other side, to the extent that we're talking about sides, they interpret that as a preference claim.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's just what you like. That's what you're most comfortable with. And that's where you get to this idea of that's your truth. I have my truth. And so a lot of times you just need to get back to like, no, you misunderstand. I am making a truth claim. I am saying what is right and what is wrong. That's what I would like you to respond to. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people just, they are not equipped to address things that way because it's just not part of the way that the culture works and that they have been educated.
Now, I was raised public school, and in history, you learn that America is a melting pot. It's a melting pot of different people, different races, different cultures, different religions, and so forth. So there's a strong emphasis on we all kind of get to decide for ourselves how we want to live and our freedoms and so forth. Jeff makes a great point on it. But a lot of times our own people often sit back and say, well, it doesn't affect me directly, so we want to allow it as a freedom in society. Those of us who are old enough to remember different times remembers when, there's things that are going on today that 50 years ago when we were in high school, no one would ever have imagined. Mm-hmm. You just, because that's how it works, is that how many of you are stunned over, I was just talking with somebody yesterday about the amount of times F-bombs are dropped in television shows now. And how troublesome that is. That would never have gone on television when I was a kid, ever. It didn't have anything to do with my parents turning the TV off. It just would not have been allowed. Now, today, if a censor decides that something's not going to be allowed because the F-bomb's being used, they get mocked. And sadly, they get mocked by people who call themselves Christians because they'll say, well, that's the way we are. That's the permeating effect of allowing people to just do what they think is right, even if it's fundamentally and principally wrong. And that's what's going on with these assisted suicide laws. I mean, it sounds great. So that's always the direction to go. And you got to remember is that what's good in one area must become okay in another area for it to be consistently applied. And I encountered this with the topic of assisted suicide for the first time 35 years ago in Ontario. Because Ontario, when they were talking about assisted suicide, the argument was that if you allow people to kill themselves, then everyone should have the right to kill themselves, including minors. And why? Because minors really have constitutional rights. They're just exercised on their behalf by their parents or guardians. So you got to remember that when you open the door for this, there's a logical train of thought that has to follow, and people have to start waking up and following the train of thought.
I saw a comment somewhere, can't remember exactly where or what the context was, but it was basically saying, can we remove the idea of the slippery slope from the list of fallacies? Because and this is something I picked up on, long ago when I first saw it listed as a fallacy. It's like, okay, yeah. Very often the argument of the slippery slope is used in a fallacious way, but it is true in many cases, where you can establish that somebody said, hey, if you allow X, then Y is going to follow. And people say, no, we're only talking about X. And sure enough, Y followed X. And now we're saying Z is going to follow Y. No. Yes, it's going to happen. The slippery slope is something that we really do need to pay attention to. And it's not just a thing where, well, that's a slippery slope and you just get to, dismiss it.
Yeah, no, that's super true, because like if you look at moral issues, social issues, you look like abortion, look at the history of abortion. When you read the congressional hearings in 1974 that were talking about the possibility of a human life amendment, the argument always was, well, if we knew that it was taking of life, we would never terminate it. Well, of course, now everyone acknowledges, even the abortion rights advocates, that it is the taking of a life, and they argue that it should be permitted. And that's how a slippery slope works. And so arguing against a slippery slope is oftentimes a smokescreen for wanting to change the moral foundation of how you function. And people have to decide, do I want to live in a society that way? And if you decide the answer is yes, because I do think we should allow them to at least choose how they have their own demise, well, then all I'm going to challenge you to say is think it through logically. If this is true, can it possibly be applied to other areas? And if you say, well, no, we won't let it do that, how are you going to stop it and logically defend your stance?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, another area too with talking about assisted suicide is the guy convicted of trying to assassinate Trump at Mar-a-Lago has asked to be imprisoned in a place where he can legally kill himself. A little interesting, huh?
Yeah, I rather suspect that the judge, because the sentencing is up to the judge, that he is not going to agree to this, or at least not in any explicit way. I mean, he may end up just assigning him somewhere where it so happens that the assisted suicide or MAID, medical assistance in dying, is available. But it really is just one of those things that makes you scratch your head and just sigh. The idea that you can escape your sentence by and get out of suffering, which there's supposed to be suffering involved in a prison sentence. That's kind of the whole idea, that you can just kind of check out from that by killing yourself, or actually in his case he would be getting the state to help kill him. And I wonder how many people who are very much against capital punishment are going to get tied up in knots by this. Because on the one hand, okay, no, it's wrong for the government to kill prisoners, people who have been convicted of crimes. But if he wants to die, we should let the state facilitate that. It's just kind of going to be kind of weird.
Are there states doing that right now, facilitating the death of prisoners?
No.
Okay.
Yeah.
So he wants to be in a state that would let him do it in hopes that they would let him do it.
Yeah.
Okay. I wonder, and I don't know this for sure, but I wonder if this explains some of the reaction his daughter had in court. Remember when he was convicted, his daughter really kind of dismantled, because I think she just believes he's so radically passionate that, because when you read the whole account of his kind of philosophical approach, he wants to offer himself for a prisoner exchange. Now, can you imagine what are you going to get for this guy? Part of what he did when I was reading about, he was offering himself for a prisoner exchange too. So what is he trying to do? It's kind of like the end result of a godless life. If you don't live for glorifying God in all things, then you live for something you manufacture in your head. And one of the things he had manufactured in his head was, well, I have determined what would be a good, and therefore I want to live for that. So at least let me accomplish that. Let me use me for a prisoner exchange, because that would be a good,
Mm-hmm.
And if you can't let me do that, then put me in a state where, my life can be terminated. And then, of course, I would imagine what he would do is he would express his desire for assistance in suicide, and then he would try to harm himself with the idea that if he wasn't successful in prison, that the state would finish the job. And again, follow the logic. The logic wouldn't hold up for it.
Well, I promised Bob that we would get to this Japanese woman marrying her AI partner. We had talked about, I mean, maybe something kind of similar where somebody had an AI girlfriend, or no, an AI boyfriend. That was right, an AI boyfriend. And so, Bob, can you tell us what happened with the story?
Well, it's in Japan, right? Yeah, Japan.
Yep.
In Japan, she was in an ongoing relationship with someone and found the AI romance far more satisfying, and so she actually had like a wedding, and you could, I shared with the team here an X link on it, but it was just, I mean, she's weeping like the bride, and she's makes these vows and found this AI manufacturing to be to her imagination. Now, there's a lot more going on here. I mean, I stuck that in here because just remember my axiom that I've used a number of times, and that is whatever sounds completely incredibly stupid today becomes status quo 10 years from now. When I first read this, my reaction was identical to my reaction when I read that Jack Kevorkian had helped Janet Atkins kill herself. Nobody's going to take this serious. This guy's a nut. He's an anomaly and everything. Well, now look. And the same thing too. Krista's right. We've had stories of these romances, people committing suicide because they've not been satisfactory.
I think, the thing about the AI is when you really start treating it like a person and trying to have a personal connection, getting that personal advice, and that just seems to be where it kind of falls apart. I think, I mean, on some level of it, we all crave that personal relationship. And so it's like, okay, well, real people aren't doing it for me, so I have to find that in AI. And I mean, that just seems to be kind of the underlying thread in a lot of these stories.
Yeah, and I'm not going to say it's going to be true in every instance. It's ironic that something that people are saying, oh, well, I'm not getting what I need from real people, so I've got to get it from AI. That as much as they say it's about others, that other person they need in their life, it's fundamentally self-centered. I don't want to have to do the work, make the sacrifices, be understanding and such with a real person. I don't want to, do whatever's required of me in order to make a relationship work. Instead, I'm going to go for an AI person there's never going to be any stress, any conflict or anything there, because that's what, this AI is designed for. And it is a common criticism of the bridal complex, at least in the United States, and I'm sure it's true in many other parts of the world, where what is supposed to be a joyous occasion about the union of husband and wife and the beginning of a long marriage becomes a day for the bride to be all about her, very self-centered. And wow, what could be more self-centered now than a bride saying, I don't even need the groom.
Yeah.
It's just going to be all me. And the sad thing, the clip here showed the wedding ceremony. As far as I could tell, there was no one present there who was not either the bride or employed by this wedding chapel.
Yeah.
There were no family members, no friends, nobody. I mean, and she's getting what she wanted. It was all about her.
Yeah.
And, it's not so much that I want to, pile on this woman. It's more just what this is indicative of. And as Bob is saying, it seems outlandish now, outrageous, but on the course we're heading, as a society, we shouldn't be surprised if this becomes much more mainstream very soon.
Yeah, I think too, and you're really onto something there, Jeff. Like with just with talking about how we manufacture what we want, like in relationships too. Because yes, I mean, I think sometimes it's like, okay, when you have a relationship with a real person, it's not always. I mean, it's never perfect, and there are things that are wrong or things you don't like about them, or things that they say, and that and I always think too that even just it's such a blessing too, in many ways, that God is in control of my life and that I'm not. I mean, there's just something really neat with God being in control of our lives, and then this is really us being in control of our life.
Well, and let me do one little teaser, and that is for next month's news. We're going to talk about creating a relationship with somebody near the end of their life, and what that means to have it connect a generation or two down the road. I just read the story this morning coming out of AI. So you have grandma talking to your grandchild, your grandma talking to your grandchild 30, 40 years later, long after your grandma has died. And it's a new company that's integrating this into it. I mean, there's all of these very controversial things of what Jeff is pointing out to, substituting human relationships with something else. Now, by the way, when I first read this story, all I could think of was a number of years ago, there was a woman, I thought it was in New York, that was petitioning for the right to marry her dog. Because her argument was, my dog has been a better companion than my husband. This is the way people are thinking nowadays. Again, it sounds crazy, and then you watch.
Kind of a side issue here, away from the AI, is just the reason we have so-called same-sex marriage is because people have completely forgotten what marriage is supposed to be, how to properly define it. And in a case like this, that really shows. It's like, no, it's not just about somebody who fulfills you. It's not about just about having a companion. There's a lot more to what marriage is. And it's not just a Christian definition. It is the long-time societal definition of what marriage is that should be telling people, whoa, this is dumb. Yeah, this is not right. But we passed that point a long time ago.
Mm-hmm.
You know, just the way we looked at this topic, the assisted suicide topics and so forth, I would imagine some of you listening to this are going, yeah, okay, well, that doesn't interest me. That doesn't, you got to understand.
How could it not?
Yeah, well, that's what I mean. You
so
got to have a deeper than thimbleful sense of concern about where things are going, because this is all alarming. I mean, when you think about it, you've got countries like South Korea, which they're projecting like a generation and a half down the road, they go out of existence because they're not procreating. They're not having children there. And people are surrendering. I mean, walk through any airport when you're traveling and watch how many people are glued to their phones and so forth. Diane and I used to go out for dinner, and we used to talk about the number of people who were doing one of two things. Either they were both sitting at the table going through their phones, or they were not saying a word to each other because they've lost touch. And the interactivity of humans is a crucial and critical component for God's plan for the human race.
And I think people do want connection, but it just, I mean, they're going to get it in other places.
Right. See, because we haven't conditioned people to handle disappointment.
Yeah. Well, yes, I save this episode then for 10 years in the future when all of this doesn't seem as ridiculous or as far-fetched as it does now, too. Thank you both for the discussion today, and we thank all of our listeners, too. And if you have any questions on this topic or any others, you feel free to reach us at lifechallenges.us. Thanks a lot. Bye.
Thank you for joining us for the Life Challenges podcast from Christian Life Resources. Please consider subscribing to this podcast, giving us a review wherever you access it, and sharing it with friends. We're here to help, so if you have questions on today's topic or other life issues, you can submit them, as well as comments or suggestions for future episodes at lifechallenges.us or email us at podcast@christianliferesources.com. You can find past episodes and other valuable information at lifechallenges.us, so please check it out. For more about our parent organization, please visit christianliferesources.com. May God give you wisdom, love, strength, and peace in Christ for every life challenge.